Greetings. Welcome to Caregiver Chronicles Friday Night Live. I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you. I'm going to share my screen in just a moment. I want to just go over Caregiver Chronicles so you will know exactly what it is and what type of services and how we can help you develop your Caregiver Chronicles for your loved one. So Caregiver Chronicles is an online course, and it began on July 13th. It's an 8-week step-by-step walkthrough of caregiving, caretaking, providing, and the overseeing process of your loved one. The course will answer all questions relating to caregiving, and myself, Dr. Jackson, the course developer, will be available to you if there are unanswered questions or you need additional reinforcement and support. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have an honorary doctorate of divinity in ministry. My mother had Alzheimer's disease for 9 years, and I was her caregiver as well. I'll tell you a little bit later about the gift Mom left me in the program. I worked at several hospitals in Southern California. I've contracted with numerous home health and hospice agencies in Southern California, and I often provide consultation for caregivers. I want to thank you for joining me here today. And to show my appreciation, I have a gift for you. I'll tell you what it is at the end of the webinar. So things you need to know as a caregiver. You need to know your loved one's diagnosis. You want to get that information so that you can have an understanding as to what you might expect regarding your loved one's care. And it's usually provided by the doctor. You want to educate yourself on the illness and knowing its possible course. You want to know the steps to take to ensure that your loved one is safe. You want to be able to carry out those steps by implementation, making sure that the steps are carried out and basically are available to meet your loved one's needs. And you also want to be able to adjust or change as your loved one's condition changes. Now, Caregiver Chronicles can help you with several areas of caregiving. Actually, it's all areas of caregiving. If you're caring for someone who is ill, you want to always include them in the decision-making process. We want to help you understand when to consider having a caregiver or respite care for your loved one, and when to consider placement for your loved one. We also want to help you understand and identify who will make decisions for your loved one if they are unable to. Let me tell you a little bit about what we do at Caregiver Chronicles. We'll educate you on the diagnosis. We'll educate you on what to prepare for if the diagnosis progresses. We'll educate you on insurance matters and Medicare, Medi-Cal, Medicaid, private insurance. We will also educate you on the available community resources. It doesn't matter what state or city you're in, we can help you with those things as well. We'll educate you on legal documents like the power of attorney, advance directives, and other legal matters that may be appropriate or important for you to have in place for your loved one's safety and well-being. We'll assist you in determining your loved one's needs as for a caregiver or when they need a caregiver, and we will also help you determine how many hours of care your loved one needs. We will encourage you to involve your loved one in the decision-making process because it will make it a lot less stressful for you as well as the loved one or your ill family member. We will assist you in determining your loved one's financial resources, so that way you can determine what care or level of care they can afford to have when they need it. And we will provide guidance and direction on finding a caregiver. Now, Caregiver Chronicles operates with a tasty format. We will teach you all the aspects of caregiving. We'll advise you on action steps to take. We'll make suggestions to you or help you resolve concerns that you may have. And we will also transform or educate you from the beginning of your loved one's illness until the recovery of your loved one from their illness or their transition. And we also will listen to your voice. You will be heard and responded to. Now, these are some of the attributes of a caregiver. These are the things that you would want a caregiver to have when they are taking care of your loved one. You would want someone who is compassionate about the well-being of another. You would want someone who is able to make an assessment or determine what the loved one's needs are. You want someone who is receptive or open to the information or knowledge that's shared or given to them. And you would want that caregiver to be someone that you can empower so you can share your wants for your loved one with them, and they will carry out the plan of care that you have developed for your loved one. And you won't have to monitor them so closely. These are some of the attributes, the things that you would want a caregiver to have. You would want someone who is able to take guidance, following the best possible plan of care for your loved one. You would want someone who would trust their gut or intuition and knowing what's best for your loved one, or telling you that your loved one needs a certain care, and you want them to be able to follow through and tell you when there's something needed. You would want that loved one to be victorious, fulfilling all the needs for your loved one. Is someone there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm in the middle of the Caregiver Chronicles. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Okay, good. Hi, Luz.
Hi.
Thank you both for joining me.
No problem.
Kind of listen in and let me go through the information here for those who are listening. And we're live on Facebook also, okay?
Right. Hello, everybody on Facebook.
Yes. So we want someone who would be able to trust their gut and have some intuition and know what's best for your loved one. When all of these things are in place for your loved one, then you will feel victorious because you will know that you are fulfilling all the needs for your loved one and that their needs are being met. And then you can rest assured that you have done what's necessary to ensure the safety and well-being of your loved one. You will be elated, happy knowing that the best scenario is being implemented for your loved one, and you will be reassured, comfortable with the plan of care for your loved one. So now let me tell you a little bit about my experience as a caregiver. I was a primary caregiver for my mother for 9 years. She had dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Now, at times, Mom did not recognize me. It got to a point where she would not know who I was. And so that was a unique experience in itself. I had to move Mom out of her familiar surroundings because my sons were vastly becoming teenagers, and I needed to get them in an environment that was appropriate for them because the area that we were in was not just the best place for them as teenagers. And so we had to move. And so when I did that, I don't know if you're aware that when you move someone who has Alzheimer's or dementia out of their familiar environment, out of their living environment that they've been in for years, they often will decline. And so that's what Mom did. She stopped walking and she stopped eating. And so it was a unique experience because at that time I realized that I needed to have live-in caregivers for her. And so I did. I had to hire caregivers to come in and take care of her. And I was a single parent. I had 3 sons. a full-time job. I was going to school full-time. And I was blessed because there were two ladies that came and took care of my mother as if she was their mother. And so because they realized what I was dealing with regard to all the responsibility that I had, they told me, go ahead and take care of your mom. Take care of your sons, I'm sorry. And we are going to take care of your mom. And so they did. They took care of my mom as if she was their mother. I had no worries for her. They made sure that all of her needs were met. And I was able to continue raising my three sons, working the full-time job, and going to school full-time at USC, getting my master's in social work. And so mom remained at home during the 9 years of her Alzheimer's disease process. I never had to place her into a facility. She remained home until she transitioned.
Mm-hmm.
So Caregiver Chronicles, let me tell you some of the things that I learned during this time. I learned about insurance matters. I learned about Medicare, Medi-Cal, private insurance, community resources like Meals on Wheels, transportation. I learned about durable medical equipment like walkers, wheelchairs, hospital beds. I learned about home health, hospice. Actually, I started working for the home health and hospice agencies. The home health agency that was coming to see my mother, I began to work for them because what happened was they were coming out to see my mom, and I told them that, I wanted to know how the social worker came to see her, and I was working on my degree in social work. And so I asked the social worker, how do I go about working for them? And they told me to let them know when I got my degree in social work. And so what I did was I continued to take care of mom and have her at home. And then when mom transitioned, I contacted that home health agency, and they actually hired me as their social worker. And so it was a unique experience because me being a social worker and having lived caregiving for 9 years, I had learned every aspect of social work and of helping someone who was ill in the home. And so when I would go to the homes to see the patients in their residences, I would know exactly what they needed to do because I would walk into something that I had lived for 9 years. And so that was the beauty of this process. And so I started working for the home health agency. I worked for I'm going to say it got up to maybe about 100 home health agencies at one time I was working for and contracting with. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I also learned about a morphine drip, which means that your loved one is in the process of or at the end stages of their diagnosis, and the morphine drip is given to a loved one to make sure that they don't have any pain or any discomfort. And so what happened was mom went to the hospital and she had pneumonia, and they told me that your mom may not make it. And I was like, okay, I understand that, and they said, well, we can give her a morphine drip and let her transition. And so I decided that that was not something that I wanted to do because mom was still cognizant. I went into her room in the hospital and I called her name, and she was able to respond to me. So when she did, I decided that it was not something I was going to do. And so she went home after that hospital visit. I think she went home with a G tube at that time, where they put the tube in the stomach to feed her through the stomach. And then after that, she lasted maybe about 6 more months, and then she passed on. I learned also about family dynamics, which can be a very unique experience when you are a caregiver for your loved one. So I mentioned earlier about the gift that mom left me. Well, mom left me Caregiver Chronicles. She left me the knowledge on all aspects of caregiving, from the beginning or the onset of a diagnosis for your loved one, all the way until the end, until they recover or transition. Mom left me the Caregiver Chronicles.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple of testimonials here. These are some of my people that I've helped along the way with their loved ones. And the first one that mentioned here is Cassandra. She was the caregiver for her father, who was 105 years old. He was actually my pastor. And so she asked me to help her navigate the medical systems because her father was 105. And so a lot of times when a person is elderly, the medical professionals will kind of do the bare minimum, some of them. And so they were not giving him the physical therapy that he needed. They would maybe see him once a month or twice a month. And I knew because of my experience working with home health and hospice that he warranted more than that. And so she asked me to contact the hospitals, and I did. Contacted the hospital and told them that, he just because he's 105, you need to really provide him with the resources and support that he needs. You need to give him the maximum number of physical therapy visits that he should get. He should get at least 3 a week. And I knew that. And so I was able to call the hospital and tell them that. And so they began to do what they needed to do because they knew that the social worker, myself, was monitoring what was going on with them. And then the second testimonial is from Jeanette. Her mother was one of my church members. And so the family was depending on me to kind of be a liaison for them because the family was living in another state and she was living here in California. And she was living alone and she was really cognizant. She would listen to me. She wouldn't listen to too many people, but she would listen to me. And so I was able to get her to do some things, but she was very resistant to anyone helping her. And so we would see her walking up and down the street, not clothed properly, and just many things that were of concern. And so myself being the liaison, at some point I had to inform the family that they needed to make some arrangements for her, make sure that she had the appropriate coverage for her so that she would not, do something that would be detrimental to her. And so they did. So they were able to come and help her. And then she actually went to a nursing home and to the hospital. And I actually visited her several times in the nursing home and hospital to make sure that the staff knew that there was a social worker kind of monitoring what was going on with her. And so she remained in the facility until she passed on. And then the third testimonial is from Helen. She was also one of my church members, and her sister had Alzheimer's disease. She was the primary caregiver for her sister, who was from another state, but she brought her sister here to California to get services here and stay with her. And so she actually asked me to help her to navigate some financial matters and social and emotional situations that she was dealing with her sister, kind of gave her advice on how to handle the care of her sister because her sister was physically able to ambulate and do the things that she needed to do, but cognitively she had some challenges. So she was forgetful, she was regressing, going back to her childhood and talking about things that had happened years ago. Even though she was here in California, she thought that she was in another state where she was from. And so I helped her to deal with those medical and doctor issues as well. It was also giving valuable information to her as well on how to care for her sister, and then herself as well as a caregiver, which would allow her to continue to do the work with her sister. So those are the 3 testimonials that I asked some of the people that I helped in the past to give. So I want to talk a little bit about involving your loved one, because when you have a loved one who is ill, it is critical that you include your loved one in the decisions that are being made. If they are cognizant, if they are able to verbalize their concerns to you, if they are able to talk with you, then it is important that you let them know that their decisions matter and their needs are met, their wants are included in the plan of care. Because if you don't, it could be a situation where they become resistant They may not go along with the care that you're trying to provide for them. They might not trust you. There might be some safety issues and family dynamics that would create tension, and that would put your loved one in harm's way. And so that's important, very important. You must always honor your loved one's wishes and put an input if they're of sound mind. If your loved one's decisions are dangerous or harmful to them, you can also always intervene. You would talk with their doctor and ask the doctor to consider completing a capacity declaration, which will say what their cognitive ability is. In other words, are they able to make their own decisions or not? That's important as well, because you want to make sure that the decisions that they made are appropriate for them, ensuring their safety and well-being. So when a caregiver is needed, that's an important area as well. If your loved one is unable to dress, bathe, cook, or clean for themselves, then you may want to consider looking into having a caregiver for them. Because at that point, you want to ensure that their basic subsistence needs, their basic ADLs or activities of daily living are met. And so that's really important. You want to also try to avoid caregiver burnout, because there is a situation where if there's caregiver burnout, then you can have a situation where it could be overwhelming for the caregiver. There's no backup. The caregiver may get sick or have some challenges themselves, and then you're still trying to make sure your loved one has coverage. So caregiver burnout can also result in abuse, neglect, or even death in extreme matters. Okay, so the caregiver can be your family member, your friend, your church member, a volunteer, or someone you hire. But just make sure it's somebody that you will feel comfortable with as the caregiver, making sure that your loved one's needs are met. So at some point, it may be appropriate to consider placement for your loved one. Now, it's always best to keep them at home if that's possible. It's best to keep them in their environment. But home may not always be the best place if a higher level of care is needed. In other words, if you have your loved one at home and you don't have the proper coverage for them with regard to a caregiver, or your loved one has some needs that require 12 to 24-hour care, they may need 24-hour oxygen, they may need suctioning, they may have skilled nursing needs, or require someone of a medical professional like a RN or LVN to be with them to handle the level of care that they need, then it may be something that you would want to consider, and that's placement for your loved one. If the primary caregiver does not have support or a backup person, it may be best to place your loved one in a facility. The decision maker, we'll talk about that a little bit. It's important to know who will make decisions for your loved one if they are unable to. You want someone who can handle legal matters for your loved ones, either before or when you learn your loved one is ill. You should always begin to look into the fact that there may at some point need to be someone who can legally make decisions. And your loved one may have even designated this prior to their illness. But if they have not, then you would want to get that done right away, because you don't want to wait until they get to a point where they cannot make decisions for themselves and there's no one designated. And it's also important to talk with your loved one. Let them know. I want to know what your wishes are. I know it's not a conversation you always want to have with your loved one about them being ill or not able to make decisions, or being, at a latter stage in their life. But you want to know what to do, because you don't want to get to a point where your loved one is ill, you don't know what to do, and then you're trying to figure out what their wishes would have been. Okay, so a next of kin, a decision maker, would be the one who is designated to make decisions. If your loved one is married, then it would likely be their spouse. It could be their children. It could be a parent if they're not married or have no children. And the next of kin falls into play when your loved one does not have a designated person that they have identified, and they get to a point where they cannot make decisions and that paperwork or legal documentation is not done, then it would fall to the next of kin. So that's important too, and there's a process to determine who that would be based on relationships that have been legalized as well. The power of attorney, advance directive. The post is the physician's order for life-sustaining treatment, which is basically called the DNR, and you may have heard that term, do not resuscitate. There's wills and living trust, an executor of estates, and those types of legal matters that Caregiver Chronicles will help you to define and know what to do if you have some questions or concerns. And just also know that if you are in another state other than California, we are prepared to help you with your Caregiver Chronicles, with determining what your steps are to ensure the safety and well-being of your loved one. So now we're going to talk a little bit about community or financial resources. There are various community resources that are needed to provide additional support to your loved one. Some of the resources are home delivered meals, Meals on Wheels, Project Angel Food. Meals on Wheels is a program where they would bring your lunch to your residents once a week, or I'm sorry, every day at noon. And then Project Angel Food, they will bring lunch out for the month. To get Project Angel Food, you have to have a specific diagnosis like HIV or AIDS, or you may need to have a diagnosis like end-stage renal disease, where you're on dialysis Monday through Friday or 3 days a week as well. Other resources include Access Transportation in California. They have Senior Solutions Transport in Memphis, and they provide curb-to-curb services. And Caregiver Chronicles can connect you with the services in your state. So if you have some questions or comments, please let us know. You can type it in the comments section and let us know what your concerns are, and we'll make sure you get that help. Insurance matters. Caregiver Chronicles has a module on insurance matters. Medicare is insurance for 65 and older who qualify and have several conditions such as HIV, end-stage renal disease, chronic alcoholism, and it covers approximately 80% of your loved one's insurance matters. Now, Medi-Cal is Medicaid in California. I want to make that clear because a lot of people don't understand that Medicaid and Medi-Cal are one and the same. It's called Medi-Cal in California, and it's called Medicaid in other states, and it's for low-income individuals, and it covers approximately 20% of your loved one's medical expenses. Now, if your loved one has Medicare and Medi-Cal, then they are covered 100% because the Medicare covers 80%, the Medi-Cal or Medicaid covers 20%, which makes it 100%. So if they're Medi-Medi, which is what it's called, then they are covered across the board for their medical insurance needs. There's private insurance like Kaiser, Anthem Blue Cross or Blue Shield. There's HMOs that are all inclusive. Those are some of the areas that we will help you with in Caregiver Chronicles. There's a module on that as well, a class on that. And private insurance or non-HMOs such as United Healthcare as well. So let me just give you a recap of Caregiver Chronicles, the online courses. Caregiver Chronicles is an 8-week, actually it's not 16 modules anymore, it's up to 20 modules now. It's an online course, and that will walk you through the step-by-step process of caregiving, caretaking, and overseeing your loved one's needs. You will get detailed information on how to handle each area of caregiving that you are faced with. Now, the course is designated to take you from the onset of your loved one's diagnosis until they recover from the diagnosis, or until they transition. So let me ask you a question. I know we didn't have a lot of time during this webinar, but do you feel this information shared in the webinar is helpful for you? And if you do, please type yes or no and let me know that. Now, these are some of the topics that are covered in the webinars. Recognizing the signs of a chronic condition. Let's see. I'm going to tell you exactly what they are because all the webinars, all the classes are complete now. So I want to make sure you know what they are. So the first class is what is a caregiver or the caregiver experience? And our guest for that particular module is Yale White. She is with the Alzheimer's Association in Beverly Hills, California. She was a guest speaker who talked about the caregiver experience and what a caregiver is. Our second module is understanding and educating yourself on your loved one's diagnosis. And our guest for that module was Glennis Hall. She is a licensed vocational nurse, and she works at UCLA Medical Center. She's a medical professional, but she talked about her experience as a caregiver for her father from a perspective of being a caregiver. Our third module is caring for a sick loved one, helping families recognize the family member's illness. And our guest for that particular module, module number 3, is Helen Harris. She was actually one of the testimonials as well that you saw a little bit earlier. And she was a caregiver for her sister who had dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Our fourth module is observing your loved ones and the family members' religious beliefs. And that particular module, module number 4, our guest presenter for that module was Pastor Jacob Johnson. He's the pastor of Growing Valley Baptist Church in the Lancaster Palmdale area. And he talked about incorporating your loved one's religious beliefs in the plan of care. He talked about contacting the clergy for your loved one, contacting the clergy for the family members. He talked about requesting the church members visit with the loved one. And we talked about requesting the clergy visit with their loved one. Our fifth module is a healthy lifestyle leads to longevity. And our guest presenter for that particular module was Dr. Lamar Price of Dynamic Health Solutions. And he spoke about what constitutes a healthy lifestyle. He talked about eating to live versus living to eat. Talked about mental, physical, and emotional health. And just to let you know that Dr. Price is an iridologist. And so if you're not familiar with it, iridology is a practice where they will look into your eyes and observe your eyes and understand your biopsychosocial makeup of your body and be able to tell you what the deficits might be or what areas you need to make some adjustments. And so he was our guest and he talked about exercise and conventional versus holistic medicine. Our sixth module, we had 2 guests on that module, and that module was navigating the medical systems. We had Dr. Heidi Morishige, who is a forensic clinical psychologist. And we also had Dr. Angela Moore Hodge, who is a physician's assistant. She's a co-owner of Healing Hands Medical Group. And in that particular module, we talked about psychological effects on the loved one when they are unable to handle their ADLs and IADLs. We talked about psychological effects on the caregiver, the primary provider, psychological effects on the family members, knowing that their loved one is ill or may not recover. We talked about the psychological effects of caregivers in general. And we also talked about trusting the medical professionals, ensuring your loved one gets the maximum services that they deserve. knowing what services are needed for your loved one, and monitoring the services provided to your loved one, the full service versus the bare minimum, and the second opinion. Module number 7, I actually was the presenter for that particular module, and that module represents helping family members or loved ones address legal matters. And so we did an overview of the importance of including your loved ones in all decisions. When should you make sure legal documents are completed? What legal documents are important? We went through an advance directive. We went through a power of attorney, which is basically considered the decision maker, the legal document that would designate a decision maker. We also went through a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment, which is called a do not resuscitate, or a DNR. You may have heard that term. And we talked about briefly living trust and wills in that particular module. And then we have module number 8, where I was also the presenter. And that particular module was the decision maker for your loved one. Who will make decisions when your loved one is unable to? The power of attorney needed to legalize, assign someone. What to do if there's no legal document available and your loved one is unable to make decisions. We talked about the next of kin in that module, fiduciaries if your loved one has a significant amount of finances, capacity declaration in that module, guardianship, and the payee on your loved one's checks. And then we had module number 9. This was a module on insurance. We talked about Medicare, Medi-Cal, private insurance for your loved one. Our guest presenter for that particular module or class is Lenidra Munson. She is an independent contractor. She contracts with various medical insurance agencies or companies or HMOs. And she talked at length about Medicare, Medi-Cal, private insurance, Medi-Medi, HMOs versus non-HMOs versus PPOs. So that was a great module also to help one understand medical insurance. And then we have module number 10, identifying community resources available to your loved ones. I was the presenter on that particular module. We talked about community resources in the state of California, but please remember that we cover all states. So if you need resources and information in your state, just let us know and we will make sure you get that information. You can type that information in the comment section. We talked about community resources in the state. We talked about community resources in the state of California. We talked about in-home supportive services, which is a program that the county has where they will pay for someone to assist with your care. We talked about home delivered meals, Meals on Wheels, Project Angel Food. We talked about transportation, respite care, and many other community resources that are available, like Social Security Administration, Adult Protective Services, those types of agencies that you would need to contact in whatever state that you are in. Our module 11, we talked about durable medical equipment, and our guest for that particular module was Dejeni Worku, who is the administrator and owner of Confidence Medical Supplies. And we also had 2 individuals on that module. The other person was Samuel Palomino, who is the marketing director for Confidence Medical Supplies as well. So we talked about durable medical equipment. We talked about wheelchairs and walkers, hospital beds, commodes, canes, and we talked about how the insurance will cover those items. We talked about TARS, which is a request to get approval from Medi-Cal for those who are low income for their DME or durable medical equipment needs. In module 12, we talked about knowing when your loved one needs a caregiver. and myself as the presenter for that module. We talked about the signs that your loved one needs a caregiver. We talked about your loved one being unable to handle their activities of daily living, like dressing and bathing and clothing themselves and that type of thing, and cooking and cleaning. We talked about when your loved one is confused and forgetful. We talked about when your loved one is misplacing items and how to handle that as well. We also talked about your loved one accusing family members of stealing, poor hygiene, poor eating habits, not recognizing family members and friends. Then we had module 13, which is searching for, screening, and securing the caregiver. And we had a special guest on that module as well, and her name is Sherry Wright. She's with All About Loving Care, and she talked about finding the caregiver, family members as caregivers. We talked about friends as caregivers, the attributes of a caregiver, monitoring the caregiver, caregiver burnout, signs of abuse, neglect, etc. of your loved one, respite care for your loved one, or caregiver relief. Now, our module 14 is still under construction, but that particular module will be on when it is time to consider a facility. When it's time to consider a skilled nursing facility, assisted living facility, or board and care, or some type of living arrangement for your loved one. And so that particular module will address home versus a facility for your loved one. When it is time to consider placing your loved one in a facility, understanding your loved one's finances to cover facility costs, types of types of facilities that are available, and I mentioned those already. Monitoring your loved one after they are placed in a facility. And then we had module number 15, which is addressing the family dynamics or challenges or conflicts or grief. And our guest presenter for that particular module was Jacqueline Howard. She is a licensed cosmetologist, but she is caregiver for both of her parents at this time. And she also has other caregiving responsibilities for other individuals. We talked about family dynamics, anticipatory grief, family challenges, family conflict, family members who do participate, and financial abuse. So those are some of the areas that were discussed in that particular module. And then we had module number 16, and this was our home health module. We had a guest for that particular module, and her name is Martine Dangerville. She is the owner of Home Health Agency, and she spoke about home health, defined what home health is. She talked about the nurses, the physical therapists, the speech pathologists, the respiratory therapists, the social workers, the CNAs, and all of the different medical professionals or different disciplines that are assigned to go to the residents when your loved one is on home health. And then in module 17, we had a hospice module, and our guest for that particular module was Robina Krikorian of Verdugo Hospice. She spoke about hospice as she defined hospice for us, which means that your loved one usually has to have a 6-month lifespan, or they may have a terminal diagnosis of some sort, and that's one of the criteria for being on hospice. We talked about no proactive measures to sustain life. We talked about the POST, the DNR. That document is one that needs to be completed in order for your loved one to be on hospice. We talked about the morphine drip, and I think you heard me mention that earlier if you were listening in, about the morphine drip, which is basically given when your loved one is at their latter stage, and they use the morphine drip to keep them comfortable and not have any pain as they transition. We talked about hospital facility admissions immediately stops hospice services. So then we talked about I'm sorry, we're going to go on to module 18. And this was planning for your loved one's transition or their final wishes. And we had a guest presenter for that particular module. That's module 18. We had Ray Hodges. He is with Inglewood Park Cemetery. And we talked about knowing your loved one's final wishes. We talked about funeral arrangements, mortuary arrangements, cemetery arrangements, and cremation versus burial. So that was a very interesting module as well, because it talked about the cost of burying and or handling your loved ones' arrangements when they do transition. So that was a great module also. And then our module number 19, we had Dr. Janice Cooper, who's a pharmacist. And this particular module was understanding your medications. We talked about pharmacist duties and responsibilities. We talked about knowing the medication and its purpose, knowing the medication and its effects or versus the side effects, outdated medication, medication reconciliation, the distribution of opioids, and the opioid crisis was discussed in that module. So that was a really great module as well. And then module number 20, which I'm the presenter for that module, was basically a recap of Caregiver Chronicles. So I wanted to give you a clear overview of Caregiver Chronicles. And those are the 20 modules that are associated with the courses. Okay, so I just wanted to share all of this information with you this evening. I hope you will join us again next week for Friday Night Live, Caregiver Chronicles. Each week we will talk about a different aspect of caregiving. If you are a caregiver and you need some guidance and direction, or if your loved one needs some guidance and direction, or if your family member needs some guidance and direction, you can register for the courses. On the screen, you see now the cost for option number 1. It's $7.99 for all 20. It's not 16 anymore. It's 20 courses. That's the first option. I'm going to go to a different screen because it's a little easier to see. This is the option where you would have the 20 courses. You would have 6 private consultations with me. And you would also have a bonus where you would be invited to a private group where we would have dialogue about specific caregiver matters. Option number 2 is $3.99. And in that particular registration, you would have access to 10 of the lessons as opposed to 8, which would be half of what we are offering. And you would have 4 consultations. And you also have access to the bonus, which would be the private group where we would have discussions about caregiver matters that would be of personal nature for you. And then option 3 is $120 for 1 lesson, 2 consultations, and you would be invited to the Facebook group for Caregiver Chronicles. And then option 4 would be $100 for 2 private consultations, and you will also be invited to the Facebook group. So that's Caregiver Chronicles overview. Wanted to just make sure I shared this information with you this evening so that you would have a clear picture of Caregiver Chronicles and what it entails. It is a complete outline of every aspect of caregiving, from the onset of your loved one's illness all the way until they transition or they recover from the illness. Caregiver Chronicles has everything included in your needs for guidance and direction as a caregiver. So now, on the screen, you see if you're interested in a free consultation call, you can email me at caregiverchronicles247@gmail.com. I'd be happy to speak with you, give you some advice if you need it. We would be happy to schedule an appointment with you as well. So I wanted to make sure you knew that. Now, I do have a gift for those of you who are interested. If you're interested in the caregiver checklist, is the gift that I want to give to you. Please type your email address in the comments section, and I will send that information to you. Okay? Once again, if you're interested in a caregiver checklist, which is the gift that I have for you for listening in on the live broadcast this evening, I will send that information to you. Please type your email address in the comments section, and you will get that information in the mail or email within the next 24 to 48 hours. This is just a little bit of information about myself, and just a little background information. So that is basically it for Caregiver Chronicles. I hope this information was helpful for you. I have a guest on the line with us. Hi there, Andrew. How are you?
I'm well, and you?
One of my sons and his girlfriend. They're in on the webinar, the live broadcast with us. So I thank you, son, for listening in. I hope this information is helpful for you all. What'd you say, Andrew?
No, it was I'm happy to be on there. Because you've been working on this for a while, and it's something that you're really passionate about. So if I can help anyway by joining in, I'm glad to.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Hi, Luz. Say hi, Luz.
Hi.
All right. So that's it then. We're going to close Caregiver Chronicles, and we look for you next Friday. Let us help you develop your Caregiver Chronicles. When you become a caregiver and you have no clue about what to do, we have all the aspects of caregiving included, and we will make sure that you get the help that you need. Or it doesn't matter what state you're in. If you're in another country, then we will make efforts to help you there if we're able to. If not, we will refer you back to those in your country. But if you are in the United States, we are quite capable of getting the information that you need. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. God bless you. Thank you, Andrew. See you, Lou. Bye-bye. Love you guys. Bye-bye.